I'm very honored and thrilled to be as well opening Casual Connect here in Belgrade and with the introduction of Branko. And I hope as well, as the morning is still early, I can bring a bit of entertainment to you starting the day, telling you about what games can learn from Heymann. Do any of you knows about Heymann? Raise your hand. Okay, pretty many of you. So that gives me the idea of the edge of my audience today. And for the ones who don't know about Heymann, Heymann was one of the most successful stories in the toy industry in the 80s. And from the success of Heymann was also born Masters of the Universe, if you know the TV show. Now you wonder, what could be possibly the connection between games and Heymann? Or in my case, working at Rovio, Angry Birds and Heymann. So bear with me throughout the presentation to get a bit more clues about it. Who am I? I have about 10 years in the gaming industry. I am French, and I started my career in mobile games, not on free-to-play games, but back in the days it was premium games, Java phone games. You know, these games on Nokia phones, Ericsson's. And as free-to-play started to rise, I also developed in free-to-play, so working on social network games, Facebook, console games, and eventually focusing on mobile free-to-play. And in my journey in free-to-play, I joined Wuga, a casual games company specializing as well in more casual games, and I was leading their titles like Diamond Dash and Jelly Splash, if you know about this. And just because Germany wasn't north enough for me, I decided to go even up north and join the flock of Rovio 2 years ago as an executive producer and working now on a new game. And you can see from the photo here, amazing summer we had. It was really great for the ones who are a bit skeptical about the weather in Finland. But I'm not here to talk about the great weather in Finland. I'm here to talk about growth. We talk a lot about growth in the industry. Yes, growth in marketing, growth in product, growth in numbers. How does that look like when we make free-to-play games? Are you familiar with these phases of development of a game? They are pretty standard now in the industry. So yes, we start with a concept, we develop an idea, we produce it, and we push it towards the soft launch. Critical phase where we compare the numbers versus the reality. And for the sake of the example here, let's assume everything is fine, you have a very healthy product, and you launch. And this is where and how we know it, where the growth happens. We roll out the marketing, the user acquisition, the whole budget, the live operations, and we grow the game. But let's pause for a minute to understand in which context are we operating today, the market. That's how the market looks like and has been looking the past years and towards the next years. As you can see, an amazing growth, and mobile has been the biggest and fastest growing category. So good news here, we are in the right industry. There's a demand that is growing. What about the offer as the demand is growing? This is how it looks like for the number of games that are available on Google Play over the past years and until today. What about App Store? A bit the same. It normalized to a certain number. But summing up these two stores, we are dealing with an offer of 1 million games out there. Yes, it's a huge offer. We have a lot of games out there and really great games. And that blue ocean that we were once looking for, it's really hard to get. The market is saturated. And who are the winners in that competition? This is the ranking of the top mobile games last year, top countries and platforms. And no surprises here. There are names that we know. Tencent, Supercell, King belonging to Activision Blizzard. Also big brands, Pokemon Go. Yes, these games have been there in the top charts, not from yesterday, several months, but for years. Candy Crush has more than 5 years now. they have been solid in the charts. So yes, the market is maturing, and we have really great games that are still on the top charts. You may notice here that one game doesn't appear yet. It's Fortnite. Yes, there's the new trend of battle royale games. We know it's performing really well. It is to be seen if by the end of the year it is part of the games that will remain, or is it another hype that will fade away. But let's get back to the reality of how we make games, now knowing a bit more about the context of the market. So yes, we have an amazing idea, we go forward, we soft launch, and then we look at the numbers, the goals. What do we do? Well, we kill it. Not sometimes, most of the time. And the sad part here is it took 2 to 3 years of development sometimes to reach that point, that conclusion. Yes, we cannot launch it. It doesn't meet the demand. And it's not just one time it happens, several times. It takes a lot of resilience to go over that cycle again and again with a team. And why? Why are we failing? Why is it so hard to launch a new game nowadays? Why even big companies, I don't know, Supercell, King, are facing the same challenges, even with great products? And I want to here revisit how we make games. You know about the game jam, concept of a game jam. Yes? So yeah, game jam. I mean, traditionally how we make games, we test several ideas. We prototype, we look for what is fun, what feels good. And then we present it to seek feedbacks. And yeah, we get excitement. The team is super excited, the company is supportive, the CEO is excited, even your mom is excited. So with a leap of faith, we give it all. We put the budget, the resources towards the soft launch. We believe in what we're doing. And we hope everything goes for the best because, after all, we are experts. We know how to make games. We know what is fun. And people love it. It has to work. And the reality, well, we crash really hard. And again, not one time, multiple times. It has to stop. Remember again, 2 to 4 years of development sometimes to reach the end of the tunnel and not see the end and starting over and over again. Yes, it is pretty crowded out there. And whatever we have as an amazing idea, it's probably served somehow, somewhere in the market. They are great products. So as it turns out, as we launch, we make a game that no one needs. It's already been served quite well. And I want to take back the analogy with startup world, not so different. Why the reason many startups fail? There's no demand of what we build. It's the same for games. And as there was a time where we were content of making a good game, let's launch a good game, and it will work. There will be traction. Good is just not enough. We must aim for great. The problem is that making a great free-to-play is freaking hard. And I ask myself every day, what is great, really? It is a hard question. What is that unicorn that everyone is talking about? Do you know? So I turned myself to Heymann, my friend, who knows about greatness. It was a huge success. Heymann, tell me, how do we make something great? So I want to tell the story here of Heymann and a show that I really loved on Netflix, The Toys That Made Us. Have some of you watched it? Do you know about it? Yeah. So these gentlemen you can see here, they were behind the success of Heymann. They were tasked by Mattel to create the next hit of toys for boys. It's a very big goal, similar to games. And what challenge were they facing? A very hard competition. It was back in the 80s, and Star Wars movie was released. So all the boys wanted nothing but a Star Wars toy. Very hard to compete with that. And for the ones not so much in sci-fi, there was a post-war hype with G.I. Joe and a lot of toys around that theme was working quite well. What about the girls? No worries, they were covered here. So as that team tried really hard, they tried to do toys that were better, faster, stronger, whatever. Nothing was working. The boys were throwing back the toys, rejecting. Nothing was interesting. Nothing was sticking. So they had to go back to the drawing board and revisit a bit their strategy. What did they miss? And they decided to go on the ground, research, understand more about their audience. They observed the boys playing with the toys, the Star Wars toys. They went to school, to playgrounds, even to parents' homes, to observe them, understand something. And indeed, they discovered something, an unserved need. They discovered that little boys wanted to feel in charge when they were playing with the toys. They wanted to have a power. And throughout that process, they found their why. I want to pause here for a second to talk about the why, the power of the why. If you know the concept from Simon Sinek as well, a very famous entrepreneur, we start with the why. It is a purpose, a cause, or belief. It's the very reason why your organization exists. And in reality, very few organizations know why they do what they do. Do you know why you do what you do? And how does it translate for games, or why? I call it the mission. We talk a lot about mission in the game industry. What is your mission? I ask that a lot to the peers in the industry, also people in my company. What is your mission? And what I hear is, we want to be in the top grossing. We want to be the leader of the category. We want to make a lot of money. Yeah, sure. And I nod and think to myself, these are results. They are not missions. What's the difference here? The mission, it is a purpose. And for who? Well, for the team. It's the people who are working on the game. Why does it matter? Why should they care about making the game? Do they even care about being in the top grossing? Will it change their lives? Maybe for some of them it matters, but not for everyone in the team. So ask yourself, do they care? And I want to remind again, working myself on a new game, it takes several years with no certainty to see the end of the tunnel. So why should we put time, effort, and energy into something that is not even sure? It has to be a bit deeper than just making money. So the real question is to your team, believe in the why of the game, the purpose, what's behind. And I believe something strongly as well in a purpose as a human being, something even more meaningful than ourselves is contribution to others. And who are others in the games? It's our players. Why should they play the game? Again, there's a great offer and competition out there. Why should they play the game over the competition? But not only to other games, to any forms of entertainment in their life. Are you making a game that is worth of their time, over family and friends, and just quality time? Do you add any value here? It does matter for the players. And to understand a bit more about that question is understanding who are the players. Do you know who are your players? And I want to share a personal anecdote here for me on the game I've been working on when I joined Rovio, Angry Birds Pop. That was a game changer for me. I wanted to understand deeper the product and my audience. So I reached out to the players by email personally, by phone, I called them. And I wanted to understand why they were engaging with the game. I connected with some of them. And I want to tell you the story of Nancy that I met. And I was so connected with her that I decided to fly over the US, Portland, Oregon, where she lives, to meet her. And we had an amazing conversation where we sat down as just two human beings together, where she was telling me about how she was playing the game, what was the meaning to her, why it was so important. It was not just a game. It was something that had a deeper meaning for her life. And I could also tell about what I was doing in the game, but for me, that was a the real change where I found a deeper mission of why I would want to make games better for that audience. So, coming back to the question, who are your players? Do you think you know? So what I hear sometimes when I ask that question, yes, we know where they live, you know how old they are, we know if it's a majority of male or female, great, what kind of games they play. And as we start to understand an image of our players, then when we look into the design, how do we define it? Let's make a game for female. We know the audience. For our old audience, because in casual games, yeah, they have a certain age, they are older. For Americans, most of them live in the US as a fact, as our players, so let's keep that in mind. And therefore, let's make a cute game. It works for that audience. Pink always works. Let's make it easy. You know, old people and female, they are not very tech savvy, so let's not make it too hard. And customization, also something that it always works. And as we pack these ideas together as design pillars for the game we make, it leads to games like this. And don't get me wrong, I have no problems with a game like that. I'm sure it's great. But the problem, it doesn't even reach the initial audience. This is not what they were looking for. They didn't want to play that. So what I encourage here to think of when we talk about players, it's beyond the demographics. It's what I call the player motivations. And this is the model that I've been using a lot with Quantic Foundry. It's available online, you can check it. What is the motivation you are serving in your game? Is it about the mastery, like in a puzzle game, for example? Or is it about a mix of motivation, immersion, achievement, like you can find in a simulation game? Or are we trying here to cover a bit of every need? And I want to give a heads up here. Yes, as we try to cover several needs at the same time, because this is tempting, we take the risk also of serving no one. And I want to share a concrete case that happened as well for me in the game I'm developing. So I make a game for a casual puzzle audience, which is pretty broad. But as I understood a bit more about my players, I created with the team subsegments of motivation we wanted to serve. 3 core motivation: the completionist, the pleasure maximizer, and the challenger. And as we started to prototype the game, design the game around these pillars, we presented it to our audience, our players. And we had very mixed feedbacks, because for some of them it was very satisfying as an experience, but for others it was very disappointing. In the end, we couldn't please everyone. That was a fact. So we had to scrap our direction and go back to the drawing board and decide, let's focus on one narrow subsegment, because we cannot serve everyone. So we had to go very narrow, and we decided, let's focus on the challengers, because we believe as a team these are the ones we can serve the best, and we know how to do it. And we prototype again, we presented similar audience, and that was completely different result. Anonymously positive feedback. Because at that point, we had a clear positioning and a clear focus of what we were building. And finally, even if we didn't discard the pleasure maximizer and the completionist, they also loved the game. But we didn't design specifically for them. That was the difference. So I really strongly encourage, don't be afraid to focus on a very narrow audience that you think you master and you know the best. And Heymann, what was their audience? Yes, pretty broad, 5-year-old boys, and that's what they were tasked by Mattel at originally. But the angle they had, that was the unique angle. They covered the need of boys who are tired of moms and teachers telling them what to do. That's why they wanted to have the power. So to the path of making a great game, important to understand why you make the game, who you make the game for. Now what? The what is what I call the vision. What was the vision for Heymann? Pretty straightforward. It was a barbarian, massive, powerful toy. And as that vision was very crystallized. It translated in all the way the toy was made. Look at him. Look at his face. Barbarian, massive, powerful. And not only he was massive by himself, but towards the other toys. Luke Skywalker looked ridiculous near Heymann. And that vision was not brought only to the toy, but to the TV show. If you remember that iconic scene when raising the sword and, I have a power! And since then, a lot of kids were screaming all that iconic quotes about Heymann. So, a way to test as well your vision. Did you crystallize your vision, what your game should be? A good way to test it is, can you describe your game in 5 words? And if you cannot, I strongly encourage to spend more time in the vision. It's not a wasted time. Okay, so we covered the why, who, the what. Now how? How do we make that great game? How do we unleash the unicorn? Tell me, Heymann, how do we do this? Oh, sorry, I don't have any relevant tips at this point. Thing is, there's no shortcut, there's no secret formula to make a great game. But an essential component I didn't mention is the team. Bring in the kick-ass, the team of experts, and you as a leader, you bring the direction, the North Star, why you make the game, what game is it, who is it for, and you have a team of experts who believe in the same thing as you. They will execute it brilliantly. They will figure it out. You don't have to worry about the how. Not so different for Heymann. They had a team of experts who had a very strong vision of a pain they wanted to solve. So they executed very well the idea of Heymann. So wrapping up here, what can games learn from Heymann? You see more of a connection now between games and Heymann? Yes? A bit? Well, Heymann, he was serving a strong need, giving back the power to the boys with that toy. And in games, my personal mission as well at Rovio, I want to bring back a why as well in how we make games. And as we used to just launch whatever we feel like and see what happens, it doesn't work anymore. We have to do a proper ground research, understand and get to know the players, onboarding the kick-ass team, and the magic will happen. The real unicorn is there, if you see it. So, coming back to the growth, how does it look like? It's a new way I would like to encourage how we think of games, how we make games. The growth doesn't start at the launch. It starts here, from the beginning, in the concept phase, the real potential, and asking yourself the right question. If you cover them, it reduces a lot the risks of failure at the soft launch. It doesn't guarantee it, but at least you're spending the right time and energy in the right things. And my piece of advice for us as game developers, yes, we love our part of a crazy genius. We have amazing ideas we want to execute because we fall in love with them. Awesome. But let's be a bit less of a crazy genius and bring in the marketer more inside us to understand a consumer need and serve it. And one last thing I would like you to remember from my talk today and about Heymann. Heymann had the power. What is your version of the power? Your why? Thank you.
You'd mentioned the user motivations and that one game can't fit all possible motivations. Is there like a maximum amount to sort of include in your concept? Like we need to get the completionist and the action. How do you approach that?
So when we, at least as a team, how we approach it when we identified motivation that we believe we could serve, it's also how do we translate in the design side. And that was very clear that when you try really like to design around a motivation, it can contradict with other motivation, how you design the game. So I see that more as a tool, as a point of focus. In the end, I know that we will reach out more players than we thought we initially designed. But that's more of a point of the focus when we design the game. So it's a tool, it's not a truth. It's like any way in games development, we give up the best bets of what we think will work, and we test. But we don't know until we're out. That's the reality of it.
So in marketing, people started switching over to more specific personas, like coming up with a very specific person with a background, his job and everything, to aim marketing more at somebody specific rather than a vague group of people, and then that helps them make the decisions for every for every decision they have to make. It helps them decide. Do you think that could also be adopted more in the design process of games already?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think on the marketing level, sometimes it's when it comes to acquire, it might be like an extension of a audience we as developers design. But definitely the value, because we tested it as well with a team. Like when you have it like so right and so narrow, you provide a depth of experience than just, for example, a casual game, a puzzle game. Let's make a puzzle game. It's very broad, and now there are so many puzzle games. How you create the depth of experience, like the feeling of challenge that it's in a second and not in a minute. So it's more in the depth of experience, and actually it has a value to think about it. Like I said, it's a very mature and saturated market. So thinking in the granularity makes sense, especially also in the design.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Another round of applause, please, for Sophie.
Thank you.